Whoo, George Karl. Oh, man, did he open up on his ex-players in his recent book that just got released, Furious George. Clever name, Curious George, Furious George. I like it. Good branding. George Karl, I think if I'm correct, is an asshole. So it took all about 5 seconds for the players, ex-players, ex-star players to go right at the man on Twitter. And I say Kenyon Martin as a star player and J.R. Smith as a star player because, J.R. Smith has a championship now and he's polarizing. Kenyon Martin was a polarizing player. He also took aim, George Karl, at Carmelo Anthony. And I know for a fact that DeMarcus Cousins doesn't like this guy, although it seems like DeMarcus Cousins doesn't like a lot of coaches. Don't hate me, DeMarcus Cousins. I've backed you up too much on this platform. Ray Allen has had disputes with George Karl. So, man, this is a good beef, and this will be good. So, Kenyon Martin was immediate. So, his tweets were, "The nerve of an awful and coward-ass coach. I didn't have a father growing up. We all know that. What's George Karl's excuse for being a terrible person? George Karl's selfish, unhappy, miserable, cowardly person. No wonder why he's been fired at every place he's ever coached." And he continues to say, "The book he is writing is full of lies and deceit. By far the worst coach I ever played for." J.R. Smith was a little more subtle, still trying to be relevant. Sad. Just sad. So what exactly did George Karl say? In the book, Karl wrote, "Anthony and Martin not having fathers in their lives became a detriment to their personalities. Kenyon and Carmelo carried two big burdens, all that money and no father to show them how to act like a man." Regarding Smith, Earl wrote that Smith's father, Earl Sr., urged his son to shoot the ball and keep shooting it from the very moment I put him in the game. I think this is a really weak move. You're hitting a spot that George Karl has no empathy, sympathy, or understanding for. So he's kind of speaking out of his ass. Kenyon Martin and J.R. Smith, it's not their fault that they grew up in the situation they grew up in. They had no control over that. We don't have control over what we're born into. You have control over your own life and what you can change. I thoroughly believe that. And what Kenyon Martin and J.R. Smith did was find an outlet, basketball, to get to the stage they were going. Now, there's no sugarcoating it. J.R. Smith is a personality, right? And when he played on the Nuggets and he played on the Knicks, he did take, of course, questionable shots. But why are you going after their upbringing? It really has nothing to do with your handle. Now, Dean Smith, Michael Jordan's head coach at University of North Carolina, Michael Jordan claimed he was a father to him. He was a father figure. Tim Duncan looked up to Greg Popovich as a father figure. George Karl obviously wasn't going for the father figure role, but he sure as hell could have played it. Now, he claimed that Carmelo Anthony is always after the spotlight, and his inability to play defense or care about playing defense is what made him a star scorer but not a star player. He might be right about that. There's a lot of criticism towards Carmelo Anthony, but Melo took the high road in his interview. He didn't go into a pissing contest with him. He had this to say about George Karl's book with a smile and a grin in that sort of way.
The truth of the matter is everybody else is kind of speaking up for me, and they, from their own experience, so I really don't have to speak on it. When I write my book later, if this would have came out years ago, I haven't been in Denver in 6-7 years. I haven't played with under him in 6, 7 years, and it's just when you're there, it's just a different story, than what you hear after the fact. I never knew it was this much. I never knew I was what's the word, conundrum? I don't even know what the hell that means, to be honest with you.
So here's what I'm getting from it. My takeaways. I think it's really weak that George Karl felt the need to air his grievances about some of his players. And George Karl is a winning head coach, and he was with the Supersonics. And, the twilight of his career, he couldn't get a grasp on his star players. And ego sounds like a negative word. I don't mean it to be. But of course, these big players, these big names do carry some sort of ego with them. It's how you manage those egos and how you Phil Jackson those egos away. And I'm referring to the Phil Jackson in the Kobe and Shaq sense, and the Phil Jackson in the Michael and Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman sense, not necessarily the Phil Jackson, Melo, Kristaps Porzingis sense. So, again, this is weak. It is weak from George Karl. And it's weak because of how he said it. There is a different way to phrase what he was trying to say. And Kenyon Martin, pretty reactionary, but how could you argue with the guy? It is a cowardly move to go after something that Kenyon Martin didn't have control over. It's not his fault. He was born into the situation he was raised with, and you have to give the guy some credit for going to a university because he played his heart out in basketball in high school and in middle school to get to that point. Same with J.R. Smith, although, J.R. Smith is definitely out there in terms of his personality. I'm not criticizing the guy for the way he grew up. I'm criticizing George Karl for the fact, once again, that he went after, in this case, something that was out of their players' control. So, not surprising the reaction. Maybe George Karl wanted this reaction. Maybe George Karl has really nothing better to do. Who knows? Like, favorite, subscribe to the video, comment below. This beef is only starting to heat up. There is going to be a lot more, I'm sure, from the players versus George Karl in 2017. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Griffith. You're such a good